Hello and welcome to Swayam MOOC on British Poetry and Drama 14th to 17th century. I am Dr. Vandana Rajoriya and I am very happy to meet you all again. In our previous lecture, we talked about Edmund Spenser, his life, his legacy as a sonnetarian. We discussed how this sonnet form reached from Italy to Britain, attained greatest heights known to us today. In today's lecture, we will first take a quick recap of the discussions of the earlier lecture, and then we will discuss at length sonnet number 75 from his collection of sonnet EMRC. Why sonnet number 75 is a very important question, because in EMRC sequence, sonnet number 75 holds a unique place because of the meditations which it takes upon, meditations upon time and nature of love and human life. By the end of the lecture, you will be able to understand this sonnet number 75 at length. You will be able to appreciate its thematic concerns. You will be able to get a comprehensive understanding of style, meter and diction, and how it plays a role in granting the sonnet its unique impact. You will also be able to understand the working of Spenserian meter in this sonnet, which is iambic pentameter. By the end of the lecture, you will be able to demonstrate a comprehensive understanding of the sonnet number 75, its thematic meaning and import. You will be able to understand how style, form, meter and diction contribute towards the making of an impactful sonnet. You will be able to understand the inner design of iambic pentameter. So, let us begin. In our previous lecture, we discussed at length about the sonnet form. Sonnet form initially was invented by Giacomo da Lentini from Italy, then perfected by Petrarch, and gradually was adopted by Wyatt, Surrey, Sidney, Shakespeare and our master Spenser. Today we are going to take up close reading of his sonnet number 75 from EMRC. Dear students, about poem there is a popular saying that well read is half done, or you can understand it as well recited is half understood. Poetry often scares us. I remember when I was a child, I always used to think that doing a poem is like solving a riddle. Yes, the poets use metaphors, figures of speech, literary devices, but still poetry is not a riddle to be solved. Poetry basically is a moment captured in eternity. When poets write a poem, they are trying to recreate a moment. So it is more about feeling, it is more about emotion, it is more about the deep reflection which that moment of inspiration brought. And it is possibly for this reason that William Wordsworth, when he defined poetry, he said that poetry is spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings and emotions recollected in tranquility. So, before we begin with our close reading of the sonnet, let us first read it with emotion, with proper feeling. So, lend me your ears and join me in reading it. Sonnet number 75 from EMRC. One day I wrote her name upon the strand, but came the waves and washed it away. Again I wrote it with the second hand, but came the tide and made my pains his prey. Vain man, said she, that dost in vain essay a mortal thing so to immortalize. For I myself shall like to this decay, and eke my name be wiped out likewise. Not so, quod I, let baser things devise, to die in dust, but you shall live by fame. My verse your virtues rare shall eternize, and in the heavens write your glorious name. Where when as death shall all the world subdue, our love shall live and later life renew. What is this sonnet about? This sonnet is about something which is time immemorial. If I ask you a question, what is it that towards which all human endeavor is directed? The answer would be that all human endeavor is directed towards attaining immortality. So, you look at all the progress which science, technology is making, all the efforts which are taken by people across the fields, across the disciplines, somehow at the heart of all endeavor to attain immortality, it is the desire to live after death also. And this poem by Spenser basically addresses this human desire to gain immortality and inevitable mortality. So, let us look at the poem line by line very closely. One day I wrote her name upon the strand. Poet paints a situation in front of us. Visual imagery, deep visual imagery evokes a beautiful scene in front of us. Poet is writing name of the beloved on strand. Strand basically is sand on the seashore. What happens? But came the waves and washed it away. The question here is, why the poet is writing the name of the beloved on the strand? Obviously, because the poet wants the name, the beloved, and in the form of the beloved and the name, the poet wants the love, feeling of love to last forever. But his effort is washed away by the sea waves. One day I wrote her name upon the strand, but came the waves and washed it away. Again I wrote it with the second hand, but came the tide and made my pains his prey. He persists, he writes the name again, but his pains again are negated by the tide. Beloved, who is watching the poet, laughs at him with scorn and says, "Vain man," said she, "the dust in vain essay." It is in vain that you are trying. Beloved tells Spenser, she tells the poet, it is in vain that you are trying to make something which is mortal, immortal. I am a mortal soul and therefore I just cannot attain immortality. And just like my name on the sand, one day even I will die, and with my death my name also will be wiped out from earth. But poet confronts here. He says, "Not so, quod I. Let baser things devise." Poet says, let the things of less significance die, get erased from the time frame. He says, "Not so, quod I. Let baser things devise, to die in dust, but you shall live by fame." He says, you will live, your name will live. My verse, your virtues rare shall eternize, and in the heavens write your glorious name. Poet very confidently says, asserts that your virtues, your excellent qualities, your beautiful, graceful being, it is my verses which will write all these in time, in eternity by these verses. Whereas, whenas death shall all the world subdue, our love shall live and later life renew. So, everything will end. When all things in the world will come to an end, then also our love will live in these lines. And Spenser is so right. Even today, in 21st century, here we are talking about Spenser and his beloved Elizabeth Boyle. He was right that through his verses, he could actually impart immortality. We looked at the poem line by line from very close, and the rough idea which we got about the poem is that poet is addressing the debate about time and immortality. The question, what can impart immortality? He responds to this question by answering that it is poetry, it is through verses that one can attain immortality. Close reading of the poem makes us understand that love, immortality, the central thematic concerns here in this poem. But what attributes the unique magic to it? Then you will realize that it is the literary devices and figures of speech which he uses, and more than that, it is the meter which plays a very crucial role in it. Now, what is the meter in this poem? Like all the major sonnets, Spenser here uses iambic pentameter. Now, you can understand iambic pentameter when you understand how syllable division and stress division in a poem works. The moment you pronounce a word, any word for example, there are pauses, very small momentary pauses which you take, and it is those pauses which basically attribute to the number of syllables in a word. For example, say any word, person, university. Now, when you speak this word, for example, university, so how many pauses you are taking? Say with me, you, ni, va, si, te. Yes. So, there are 5 syllables in this word. Our previous word, person, then person. 2 syllables are there in it. How these syllables work? Then you would realize that in every word, there are some vowel sounds and there are some consonant sounds. And every word is made of these combinations of vowel and consonant sounds. And every time a vowel sound comes, there is a pause. Why? Because when we pronounce vowel sounds, we give free passage to air. But when we pronounce these consonant sounds, then the flow of air gets obstructed. And in an iamb, what happens? There is a regular arrangement of syllables which imparts a unique music to the poem. So, iamb basically are 5 feet. Now, when you look at this poem, One Day I Wrote Her Name Upon the Strand, you realize that there is a regular, musical, rhythmic arrangement of syllables and stress pattern. So, it's just like heartbeat, dum da, or tapping of feet, when you tap your feet. So, how does it happen? An unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. It becomes 1 feet, and 5 such groups, they make 5 feet. So, in very simple words, you can understand that in this poem, Spenser uses 5 pairs of these unstressed and stressed syllabic words and weaves a music out of it. So, let us look at it. For example, let us look at first line. One day I wrote her name upon the strand. Now, notice the stress pattern in it. One day I wrote her name upon the strand. One day I wrote her name upon the strand. So, here first syllable is unstressed and second syllable is stressed, and this forms 1 pair. And likewise, see, one day I wrote her name upon the strand. So, these 5 pairs make it an iamb, and because of this the poem gets its structure which is known as iambic pentameter. One day I wrote her name upon the strand, but came the waves and washed it away. Understanding this stress and how it works, it is very important for a student of literature. Now, the question comes, you would ask me, how do we understand, how do we know which particular word is stressed and which particular word is unstressed? So, have you looked at dictionary? Whenever next time you look at dictionary, notice that in dictionary, the words have apostrophe at various places in it. And apostrophe basically informs you how and where to put the stress in a particular word. So, next time when you visit dictionary and you note down the words, notice the apostrophe mark, because it tells you the word which is followed by that apostrophe mark would be stressed, and where it is not there, just a break is there, that would be unstressed. Now, it is this beautiful heartbeat like musical flow of iambic pentameter lines which give music to Spenserian sonnet. He uses alliteration to effect very beautifully. What is alliteration? It is repetition of consonant sounds in a poem. So, there is repetition of verse sound in lines like waves, washed, vibed, and after alliteration, another literary device which he uses, where he puts to use rhetorical devices. For example, this poem is written in the form of a debate. So, the poet says a point and there is a response from the beloved. Then there is again a rebuttal round where the poet again asserts. So, the beloved says that it is in vain that you are trying to make an immortal thing mortal, and then in rebuttal he asserts that it is through my poem, through my lines, that you will be attaining immortality. Then in every poem, another important component is imagery. Basically, poets use 4 kinds of imagery when they write their poems. So, what are the 4 kinds of images? So, you have visual imagery. The poets use 4 kinds of imagery when they write their poems. So, you have visual imagery, you have auditory imagery, you have olfactory imagery, and you have kinesthetic imagery in it. Visual imagery is where the poet evokes whole scene in front of you. So, it is like word pictures. So, when you read those lines, you can visualize the whole scene, entire action happening in front of you. Then auditory imagery. For example, so many times you find that poets are describing sound and you could hear that sound, feel that sound. It is auditory imagery. Sound is described at length. Then olfactory. The moment the poet describes smell and you can relate to it, experience it, then it is olfactory imagery. When the poet describes touch, physical sensation, and you are in a position to relate to it, the imagery which he is using is kinesthetic imagery related to touch. Now, let us look at this poem. What kind of imagery Spenser uses here? One day I wrote her name upon the strand, but came the waves and washed it away. Again I wrote it with the second hand, but came the tides and made my pains his prey. So, yes, you've guessed it right. What kind of imagery he is using here? He is using visual imagery, and this deep visual imagery makes the poem and its impact emotionally very powerful. Initially, when we were discussing, let us look at the entire sonnet in totality and understand the working of theme, working of these literary devices and figures of speech in making the poem powerful enough. Spenser revolutionized sonnet form by the unique interlocking rhyme which he has invented. So, let us very closely look at the rhyme scheme here also. So, rhyme scheme, how does it go? So, it starts with strand, then away, then hand. The first 4 lines are strand, away, hand and pray. So, here strand rhymes with hand and away rhymes with pray. Spenser created his unique sonnet form by inventing this interlocking rhyme scheme. What is interlocking rhyme scheme? Let us look at this in this poem. So, the lines rhyme like this: strand, hand, away, pray. Now, what is the last sound or rhyme of the first stanza? That becomes the initial rhyme of the next stanza. So, just like pray was the last line, so the first line here in the second stanza is assay. So, assay, then decay, and then immortalize likewise. So, likewise is the last line of second stanza. Now, it becomes, the rhyme here becomes the first line of the next stanza. So, this is known as interlocking rhyme scheme, and when you look at the recitation of the poem, then this interlocking rhyme scheme, it makes the poem, sound very swift, very composite. It imparts the poem its swift flow. Spenser as a sonnetarian is important because of the innovations which he brought into the sonnet form. This interlocking rhyme scheme was not the only invention brought by him. We discussed in our earlier lecture also that Spenser revolutionized the thematic concerns of these sonnets also. While be it Petrarch, be it Sidney, be it Shakespeare, all earlier sonnetarians, they painted unrequited love in their sonnets, but it was Spenser who sought fulfillment in love, and he changed the sonnet form also. So instead of following that octave and sestet pattern, he went for three quatrains and a couplet form. Why? Because it gave him that freedom where he could paint intense personal experiences with passion and power very beautifully, and because of this form he could give the poetry deep personal philosophical touch. While all other sonneteers, they were painting standalone sonnets. So one sonnet where they paint one emotion or experience, another sonnet and they paint another experience or emotion. But Spenser doesn't do it that way. When he writes EMRC, he visualizes the entire sonnet in one deep knit structure. So this entire EMRC has a thematic unity in it, and every sonnet somehow is related and contributes to that thematic unity. So he starts this sonnet sequence with description of his courtship of Elizabeth Bayol, his beloved. So he paints how he very passionately woos her, longs for her. He sings of her rare virtues. He goes about to paint the repeated rejection which he keeps on getting in his pursuit of the beloved. He also paints the deep frustration which he feels at the constant, continuous rejections, and towards the end, the deep fulfillment which he gets when his courtship is approved and it culminates into final marriage with Elizabeth. So, entire EMRC sonnet sequence, it becomes a story, a song, a celebration of courtship of Elizabeth Bayol by Spenser. And it is this unity, structural unity which he imparts, it makes his place as a sonneteer in the history of English literature come out very prominently. We all know that every great work of art has universality in it. When we look at this sonnet, a question which comes out very prominently is, what is there for a modern reader in it? So is it just the charm, the music and the time immemorial theme of immortality and struggle of human beings to attain immortality, or there is something more than that in it? When you look at the poem, basically three things come out very prominently in it. So first one is very obvious, the carnal debate between human mortality and poetry's power to grant immortality. Now what do you think? Whether poetry really has power to grant immortality to a person, or it is just for emotional relief, it is just a literary conceit which is presented in front of us. So think about it and reflect, and we will talk about it in our discussion forum. Second question, which when you look at the poem you find very prominent as a modern reader, is when you look at the female voice present here. When you look at entire body of British literature of the time, one thing which comes out very prominently is that you do not find a very powerful, assertive female voice in it. But though the beloved speaks only once, but he is given a very powerful voice. She says, "Vain man, courtesy, that dost in vain essay, a mortal thing so to immortalize." So she is critiquing the poet. She is critiquing the poet's desire to attain immortality, to defy time and live forever till eternity. Now, this critique which she presents, how can it be looked at given the traditional gender roles of the time? So, as a feminist study also, EMRC, all the sonnets of EMRC, they present a very important sight in front of us. So, apart from immortality and traditional gender roles, when you look at the poem, eco-criticism is an upcoming field. So, you realize that what is it that we get when you look at the ecological perspective which you find in this poem. So, here waves and the name written in the sand. This name written in the sand, it is not just a metaphor for the immortality of human beings and fleeting nature of time. And the waves washing it away, they are not just an affirmation of the inevitable mortality of human condition, but somehow it also highlights the spirit of the age, the idea of the age, how they felt. So, this repeated washing away of the name, when you look at the treatment of nature in the poem, then what is highlighted here? See, all the lines, what are they highlighting? Nature's indifference to human endeavor. So, this poem offers many points for reflection, for thought and for discussion. And not only this poem, this entire sonnet sequence, it offers many points for reflection and thought to the modern readers also. And it is because of this element of universality that, as Spenser himself asserts, he lives and so lives his poem. And it would not be an exaggeration to say that till poems are read and appreciated, Spenser and his beloved will live. In our next lecture, we will be taking up close reading and analysis of sonnet number 57 and sonnet number 67, again having that deep personal touch, warmth and charisma of Spenser. Till then, keep reflecting on this sonnet. See you tomorrow.